Since its passage, the Affordable Care Act has had legal minds across the country pondering the law's constitutionality. Now that's been decided, but the debate is only heating up. I spoke with Dr. Katherine Scheirman with Doctors for America and Andrew Spiropoulos, law professor and director of the Center for the Study of State Constitutional Law and Government at Oklahoma City University, about the High Court's ruling. Dr. Scheirman, what do you think of the court's opinion?
I'm not a lawyer, obviously. My take on it, though, is that this is a huge win for the American people. It's a huge win for the people of Oklahoma, because 22% of people in Oklahoma are currently uninsured. This law is going to help them a lot. A lot of people who have employer-sponsored health insurance are going to benefit tremendously from the consumer protections, where they can't take your health insurance away when you get sick. If you lose your job, you'll still be able to get health care. So I'm very happy with the results for the people.
Professor Spiropoulos, looking at it legally, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion. That surprised a lot of people. Did the rationale surprise you?
Well, I don't think anyone was surprised that Roberts wrote the opinion. There was a lot of speculation that that even if the law was upheld, Roberts would, along with Justice Kennedy, who everybody thought would be the deciding vote, remember, Roberts can assign himself the opinion if he's in the majority. And many people thought that no matter how it came down, he would find a way to be in the majority and assign himself the opinion, which is often what the Chief Justice does. What everyone's surprised about is not the result. I thought the law would be upheld myself, but everyone's surprised that it relied on the taxing power instead of the Commerce Clause.
What's the significance of that?
It has enormous significance. Ever since 1937, at the beginning of the New Deal, the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the use of the Commerce Clause in economic regulation. They have not found a limit in 75 years for the Commerce Clause. This opinion, the majority of the court says there's a limit to how far the Congress can go in regulating the economy. That's of enormous consequence, and I think people are missing that. With regard to the taxing power, it's a very broad interpretation of the taxing power, but I don't think, frankly, it's that much different than what we already had. I mean, the taxing power had already been interpreted in a broad way. This certainly stretches the law, both constitutionally and the statute, to reach this result, but not as much as people think it does.
Dr. Scheirman, the court upheld the individual mandate through the taxing power. What is the significance of the individual mandate in making this particular law work, if indeed it will work as it's intended?
The main benefit of the individual mandate is actually to insurance companies, because the law also says that you can't exclude people from coverage because of pre-existing conditions. Well, if only people who are already sick get insurance, people's premiums are going to go up, and insurance companies are going to be in trouble because nobody will be able to afford insurance. So it's sort of a death spiral when only sick people buy insurance. So this makes everyone responsible for paying for some of their own health care if they can afford it. Remember, the law also has tremendous expansion of the Medicaid provisions to help low-income people, and provides subsidies for people up to 400% of the poverty level. So it really helps people in the lower part of the income bracket afford health insurance. But for those who can afford it and just choose not to have it, there's a very, very small penalty, which has no really criminal penalties or anything associated with it. So it's a trivial penalty. But the experience of Massachusetts, at least, has been that when health care is affordable and people can get it, they buy it. So that's a great thing.
The court, though, did take exception to the Medicaid provision, certainly the federal government being able to coerce states to comply.
That is another absolutely stunning result of this opinion, is that, again, for the first time since the New Deal, there are actual limits to what Congress can do under the spending clause, to condition its spending, to get states to do what it wants. The court, I mean, it had said in the past that if the law is too coercive, we'll strike it down. But it had never found the law to be too coercive in over 75 years. And the idea that a majority of the court, if actually a large majority of the court, would find there's a limit to how far Congress can use the spending clause, again, is yet another stunning victory for conservatives.
As a practical matter, what does that do to the law? Has anybody analyzed that yet to determine exactly how that will affect the impact and reach of this law?
What it does is that it gives states a genuine choice as to whether or not they want to do the Medicaid expansion. Because of the way that law had read earlier, and there was some dispute about this. I, in fact, told the state legislatures this was the case, and people disagreed with me. Turns out I was right. That the way that the law originally read was that you would lose all your Medicaid funding if you refused to do the expansion. The court rewrote the law to say that you don't lose all your funding, you only lose the funding for the expansion itself. So that gives states a genuine choice as to they want to do the Medicaid expansion. But I think we're missing the most important point in all this. This debate is not over. This law hasn't taken hold yet.
Right.
This is not going to be, this court is telling us, we're not settling this, you're settling this in November. And so all these arguments, all these debates that we have over the policy, all they do is get pushed off to the November election.
Dr. Scheirman, what will happen if states do not go ahead and comply, certainly by setting up healthcare exchanges and other things that the states would have to do?
My understanding is that states like Oklahoma that refused federal funding and refused to do the legislation that was required to set up their own exchanges, the federal government will set up exchanges so that people in Oklahoma will still have a chance to go on a website and get affordable health care for themselves. The difference is that it won't be, tailored for the needs and wishes of Oklahomans. And I think that's bad. I think Oklahoma's different than California or New York, and we had a chance to do it and chose not to.
We'll be hearing a lot more on this, to be sure, in the months ahead. Dr. Katherine Scheirman, Professor Andrew Spiropoulos, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.